demonstrated history of working across multiple aspects of the media. He's also the director and founder of the Ian Perry Scholarship, an exhibition here on display. He works with the best photographers and done amazing things for photography in general. Neale Bailey has traveled over 80 countries, more than 50 of them in the saddle of a motorcycle, as a photojournalist, two-time Telly Award-winning television producer, host, and as a humanitarian. He has set up the Wellspring Foundation that currently funds projects that benefit sick and abandoned children in Peru, South Africa, Kenya, and it's to help raise money and awareness. He leads motorcycle adventure tours that end up with visits to all the projects. Who doesn't want to go along? I'm sure you will enjoy listening to the conversation between Neale and Aidan. Give them a big hand.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with Neale Bailey. Neale, professional motorcyclist, philanthropist, TV journalist, prolific traveler, storyteller, humanitarian. Where did it all begin? I mean, that is a story. So where did it start? You were born and raised in the UK.
Born and raised in the UK. And firstly, thank you very much for having me out here. It's been just mind-blowing to be here amongst the world's best photographers, and very humbling experience. So thank you for letting me tell my story today. But grew up in southern England, seaside town. And I think, we grew up in a house. My mother was left by my father very early, so we grew up on welfare and a lot of money. It was a bit of a hard-scrabble existence. And I think one of the keys to that were two things. One, my mother won a £50 premium bond when we were kids and sent me to Italy. And, it was all the money she had, 50 quid, and sent me off to Italy. And I think that started, put the travel bug in there. And then we had a television show at the time called Blue Peter, which I'm sure you're familiar with growing up. And every year they would do a fundraising campaign for projects in Africa, mostly Ethiopia when we were kids, a lot of drought at that time. And so as kids, we would run around the neighborhoods all weekend, all summer usually, collecting what we would now call recyclable goods, although they weren't called that at the time. And we would send them to Blue Peter. They'd either melt them down or turn them into things. And do you remember the thermometers you used to get with campaigns?
Mercury? Oh, yeah.
No, they used to put a little thermometer and you'd raise so much money every...
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, they showed the scale of how much they'd raised.
Yeah, so we would sort of tune in every week and would see how much we raised. And I think, I was talking to you earlier about this. I mean, essentially, we probably raised very little more than some lug nuts or a bag of rice. But I think
it seemed like a lot.
But as kids, it was our project.
Yeah.
We were taking these Land Rovers and grain and help to Africa. And, as kids growing up on welfare, I mean, we didn't have a car, we didn't have heat in the house. I mean, you got a bath once a week, whether you needed it or not. Your mother boiled the last of the flavor out of the food. And, I mean, it wasn't a great existence, but we didn't know that. We always were being introduced to where real hardship was. And I think those two things, I didn't realize they were in there till a lot later in life.
All right. But let's talk about motorbikes, because motorbikes still are your passion, but you had a passion for them when you were younger. How did that evolve? How did you get into biking?
Growing up in England, there's a very big motorcycle culture. I mean, it's, a lot of people use bikes for transportation and entertainment. So I just, ever since I could remember, wanted a motorcycle. By the time I was 16, I was on a moped. By the time I was 17, I was riding a bike. And a very pivotal book came into my life in my late teens, early 20s. A British chap by the name of Ted Simon rode around the world on an old Triumph, and the book is called Jupiter's Travels. Right. And he traveled 63 countries, 56,000 miles. He was on the road for about 4 years, and it really became, I think, the most famous motorcycle travel book. He's influenced generations of travelers, and I was one of them. And in the early days of travel, we had very little money. Unemployment was very rife when we got to teenage years. And it kind of shaped, I think, the way I always approached life, of having to do something with a very, very small amount of money and being really innovative to how you use that money. So my early trips into Europe were by hitchhiking. my early trips into America were by hitchhiking, and finally, by about the middle 80s, I was able to raise enough money to start traveling on a motorcycle.
Right. But you were on a motorbike professionally as well, right? That was.
Yeah, I didn't get to a professional career in motorcycling.
We're going to see it's Neale on a bike, if you've ever tried this. Where is this?
Is that quick talk that was running? So this is a BMW S1000RR, and you've just gone 186 miles an hour on the back straight at the Circuit of the Americas. That was flat stick, safe gear. The little light that was flashing was the rev limiter through the gear. So that's as quick as you can go on a production bike on a closed circuit. So.
And you've said that being on a motorbike is for you like a Zen experience.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah,
it's your happy place.
Yeah, that's actually a photograph taken by Simon's brother Richard.
Oh, really?
In southern England, in our hometown. So, yeah, that's Laverda 1200. And I don't, to me, riding a motorcycle, you know, I look at all the photographers that we've been around and the art that they make. To me, being on a motorcycle is the thing that I'm always in training. I still take training courses. I've been riding for over 40 years, and I'm always trying to perfect the art of riding a motorcycle. It's just, I think when you're on a motorcycle, you have to concentrate on all of the controls and the movements. So you can't think about anything else, and that's why it's such a Zen experience. You might look at it and you hear an engine revving and you see they look quite violent when they're moving.
So it's the concentration, because obviously there are penalties. Riding a bike at that speed and that power, you've had some accidents, no doubt.
That's why I'm like one of those old trucks going down the road. I can't walk straight, yeah.
Right.
I've been bolted back together a couple of times. So.
And adventure and travel are clearly very much part of your DNA. And you've had some pretty extraordinary experiences that you've been telling me a few of them. But why don't you share a couple of the stories? You were shot at in Nicaragua.
Yeah, I mean, it was all a bit of an accident, really. I was in Florida. I hitchhiked around California, actually hitchhiked around America, across Canada, down the West Coast, bought an old car. Ended up in Florida, lived with a very ambitious fellow, and he had this life goal to rob a bank. And so
say that again, sorry.
He had his goal was to rob a bank.
To rob a bank.
Yeah,
okay.
so, you know, at that age, you know, never been the smartest or the sharpest tool in the shed, but I figured this might not be a good idea to stay around. So a couple of days before he robbed the bank, I jumped on a plane and ended up in Belize. And I thought, I had some naive idea that I would go south to Brazil and I'd figure it out. I had a couple of $100, so off we went. And I didn't realize that that was during the Sandinista-Contra War. There was a lot of problems in El Salvador, Guatemala. So for the next couple of months, I sort of spent time dodging bullets and different situations. I ended up dealing money on the black market in Nicaragua to stay alive and fund my drinking habit. And it was, but it was all just, I think I just stumbled into it. It wasn't a premeditated idea that I would go and see all this stuff.
And there was another story, I think, with in Mexico, where there were some guys with machetes were chasing you.
Oh, yeah, many years later we were trying to get through a jungle section in Belize and ended up getting chased for quite a long time. And actually it's funny because I watched the Johnny Depp movie, The Rum Diaries, where he gets chased in the movie. And I'm like, that's kind of what happened to us, you know? Yeah. And we just made it back to town. I mean, another half a mile and they'd have had us. So, yeah, I've dodged a couple of near misses.
And so traveling around the world on a motorbike, I mean, you then realized that you could actually make a career out of it. So was it in 1999 you were up in the Himalayas and you suddenly realized, wait, I could actually turn this into a career. So you started a TV journalism career. Tell us about that.
It actually started in 1996. I was riding around Europe. The last physical time I saw Simon in Romania, and I was on the motorcycle for 5 or 6 months, and I finally came to the southern part of Spain, and I was sitting looking at the lights of Africa in the evening thinking, you know, should I carry on or should I go home? You know, I had left school at 15, so I wasn't educated. Computers were starting to come into our world in a big way at that time, and I was computer illiterate, and I thought something just kept compelling me that I just needed to go back to America, get a bit of education, and figure out how someone could pay me to travel around the world, because I had these great stories. You know, you go to the pub with your snapshots, and it's great. You got the greatest story at the pub, but you're broke, and I just needed to figure a way to keep doing it and not keep washing up home broke.
Talking about money, I mean, there was a story about you funding one of your trips using, was it your grandmother's funeral money?
Oh yeah, that was a particularly. So when I went back to England, I had been working in a motorcycle shop, and I had just been traveling in Peru. It was the trip that I met Father Gio. We landed in Guatemala. We rode 6,000 miles, 9 countries, 6,000 miles on these old $300 motorcycles, and I think I'd spent about $1,500. Sold the bike in Peru, had a torrid love affair with a raven-haired beauty in Panama, came home, and a fellow walks into the shop that I was working and said, proudly announces that he's just spent $5,000 on chrome for his Harley. And I said, well, you're a idiot. And I realized that it's not really what you need to be doing in retail. So I quit my job and I took $5,000.
Right.
And I think I was a bit of a, I'm going to go show this guy. So when I got to England, I didn't want to change my dollars to pounds to buy a motorcycle. And Granny was still alive and in the home, and my mother had this money tucked away for her funeral. So after a few weeks, I managed to talk her into loaning me the funeral money to buy the bike, and promised her I'd be back before Granny popped her clogs.
But your grandmother was still alive.
She was, yeah.
And you managed to persuade your mother to give you the money that was saved up for her funeral.
Exactly. So I took Granny's funeral money, because, I mean, she lived to be 100 and something. I mean, she was only 97 at the time. I mean,
right.
Yeah,
right.
So it was a deft maneuver.
Right. So you went to Peru, and
I did.
When was the first time you went?
The first trip was that trip I just told you about that ended up in Peru.
Right.
We got the old bikes, went to Guatemala, we rode south. And I think that was really we have these moments in life where we look back and we realize, like with Blue Peter, it took a long time to look back to my childhood and understand why I had this desire for the travel and the philanthropy. And we were just riding through the Andes. I was divorced and pretty out of control, working in a bike shop, just kind of going fast and living, wasn't really living for any great direction, and ran into a Canadian priest by the name of Father Gio.
Father Gio became very important in your life, right?
Well, he did. We spent a couple of days together, and it's kind of reminiscent of what we've been doing, with everyone here this last few days. You really get to your life story quite quickly in these environments. And Father Gio, I suppose to use a term that we would use today, downloaded his life to me. I mean,
Right.
He basically told me his life story. And I know that it's particularly odd because he got me up before dawn one day to go to the Temple of Lama, and I've never been up before dawn in my life unless I was still up. And he just told me these stories, and somehow I remembered them pretty much verbatim.
Right.
And I wasn't in the storytelling, journalism, photography world at all at that time. But I had always written really long letters, airmail, if anyone can remember such a thing, when we used to write letters.
Yeah.
And I think it was always something in there that just needed to bring it out. And I think that moment with Father Gio put me on that track. Went to Europe, came back, got some education, and begun to do it professionally.
But he introduced you to something very special in your life as well, right? There was a
He
particular
did.
place. I think we're going to see it here. If we can get the lights down, take a look at this.
I've never seen anyone go in there and not have one child attach themselves.
¿Cómo te llamo? Angelina. Wow, Angel.
I wish I could take them all home, but this one in particular is breaking my heart.
I went in there and met Kathleen the first time, and she's just the most horribly disabled little girl and had the most disgusting upbringing. Kathleen! Kathleen! Hey, Kathleen, how are you? She is más grande, huh, Kathleen? I don't know, you won't remember me, will you? It's been a long time since I saw you. You look really good, girl. You remember me? Do you remember me? You remember me, don't you, huh? You need to film the noise I make, because you can't see me, can you? The challenges she faces as a human being in this life are like these obstacles, and for some reason she just draws to me, and I just draw to her, and she's the one that drives me always to go back. Yeah, and I think she remembers me, baby. Huh?
Baby. You baby.
Is she happy, Freddie?
Happy.
She happy?
Face happy.
Ah, she remembers me, huh? Do you remember Brandon?
She looks so much better.
Doesn't she?
Oh my God.
She really looks better. That's my girl, huh?
Yeah, let's get a picture.
You're the one that started all this crap. If I didn't fall in love with you, I'd never came back. Yes, you crazy girl. I mean, you're talking about the offal of society. I mean, these are kids nobody wants. Because of their disabilities, because of their handicaps, parents are prostitutes. I mean, you know, literally sometimes they wake up in the morning and there's a baby in a basket on the doorstep. She had a lack of oxygen at birth.
Yeah.
Yes, she did. She was born in the back of a taxi, apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, if the story's correct. Teenage mother, gave birth in the back of a taxi. You know, the first time I came down here, I did a medical mission, and, you know, I just saw the need, and then, you know, you go home and you're just like, okay, I got to do something. So I started a not-for-profit Wellspring.
It's a little bit short already. Give it just a little extra.
This little one needs, we got to find special care for this
One more.
Kathleen,
Two
one
more.
One más, one más, one más.
Dos más.
Dos más. Yeah, we got to find some help for this
She
little
says,
one.
what is that?
What's that? We started fundraising, started raising awareness, and you know, kind of amalgamated that now. You know, Neale Bailey Rides is about taking people on journeys to places of need, because I think, you know, we should enjoy our life. I mean, we should have fun. We should get out. Should everybody do what I do? Absolutely not. I mean, some people are quite, you know, we have a lot of different paths we need to go in life, but we rarely go places where there isn't a menu of options. And I would like an option on kids in high school's life menu to do what I do. To ride motorcycles, to travel, to see the world, experience culture, experience beauty, and then give something back to people that need something at the end who have less than we do.
So that was a major turning point in your life when you met that little girl, Kathleen, right?
It was, and you know, Father Gio, I'd met him in '95, and the first ride that I took in the motorcycle journalism space was actually a charity ride in India in '99. And at the time we were writing back and forward, and the airmail letters stopped from Father Gio, but I didn't really notice married kids, you know, starting a career in the motorcycle space, you know, traveling the world, testing motorcycles. And one day I got one of those sort of Christmas letters that go to everybody that people used to write, talking about the passing of Father Gio.
Right.
And I was really torn up because
It was 2001.
it was about 2004 when I learned, 2005. So I connected with his sister, started talking back and forward. And of course, at that time, you know, young children, busy career, you just, you know, head down, throttle wide open. So it wasn't until 2008 that I decided I had to go to Hogar Berlin, which was one of the places that Gio had talked a lot about to me, that his sister was still supporting. And I went down, excuse me, I put a medical mission together for the kids. And as you said, there was a moment there where I'd been there for a whole week doing medical care and doing stuff with the children. Suddenly everything changed one day. There was something in the air, the light.
You felt you had a purpose as you were
I didn't know- I
road
didn't-
to Damascus?
I didn't know what it was. I thought it was I was just so confused. And it was the day that Kathleen came back. And I was talking to Mohammed the other evening about, he saw a photograph from Saddam McCullum and it changed his life when he was a young man in college. And I took a photograph of Kathleen and she had blood on her face and snot coming out of her nose and she was crying. And I felt really bad to take the photograph because she was in distress. And I looked at the back of the camera and I said, that photograph is going to raise $1 million.
Right.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't had the thought at that point. I don't know why I said that. So I came back and I started Wellspring. And at the time I was doing a motorcycle travel show with a very well-known American celebrity from the car world. And, you know, we were riding around Europe and not Newfoundland, sorry, in Quebec. We did some stuff in America, and it was a very nice family show. It was myself.
You had your own TV channel?
It was on the major network in America. Yeah,
Right.
It was on a Fox station, Speed TV, and it was part of my journalism that I was doing in the motorcycle space. And I really enjoyed the show, but I always had this sense that it wasn't going deep enough. It was a little foo-foo. It was fun. It's family entertainment, and it was a great time with great people. And in the spring of '09, I was very, very distressed because I realized that if I continued fundraising at the rate I was going, I wouldn't get these kids home built until I was about 187 years old. And the TV show wasn't really everything I wanted it to be, and the light bulb came on, and I decided, let's put them together. Let's put philanthropy, motorcycling, and adventure and travel all together, where we take our motorcycles, we go and have an adventure, we ride, but we give something back at the end, and we bring the viewer along.
And was that when the Wellspring Foundation started? Or?
Yes, yeah. So by '09, Wellspring was going. I was struggling to get it going, struggling my TV show. They came together. I went back to Peru. I rode around, wrote a story about it. Went back in 2010 to film a pilot to start pitching a TV show.
Right.
And it was kind of interesting because I set this meeting up with BMW out in Yosemite National Park for a BMW launch. And I'm all primed up with my presentation and my slides, and I'm all ready to go to make the pitch to get the money for the pilot. Go out, run out of skills, snap my collarbone, smash my leg up, get back to the hotel. I get a bag of ice. I borrowed a couple of pain pills off the PR guy, 2 double whiskeys, went off, made the presentation, I have no clue what I said. And off to Peru we went, and I had the pilot.
I think we've got some footage from that, if we get the lights down.
This is actually in Moquegua at the orphanage.
Yeah, this is the orphanage, the story
I'm
of
sitting
the
in an
orphanage.
old abandoned building that used to be a vibrant, lively home for over 400 abandoned children here in southern Peru. It's called Hogar Belén, Inn of Bethlehem. And in 2001, huge earthquake came through the town of Moquegua and basically flattened this city and mercifully left this building standing. This had originally been an army barracks, so it was built on a really, really solid foundation. And Sister Loretta, the nun that used to run this orphanage, had brought all these children here. She had come to Moquegua 40, 50 years ago, started taking children in one at a time, 2 at a time, 5 at a time. And by 2001, say she had over 400 children here. So when this was deemed unfit for human habitation because of the cracks in the walls and the safety, they were moved from here onto a farm, which is just a few miles across the river. And over the last 15 or 16 years, it's just been impossible to raise enough funds to get those children off the farm and back here to this building. So our hopes for this year are that we can once more build a home here. We have to take this old home away, get a structural survey done, and build a new orphanage.
So you did an amazing job raising money. How much did you raise first time round?
It's been, I think if you count the money with the TV show and the donations, I've topped my $1 million. So at times $65,000 was one we did that year, then various times over the years.
So in a way, your grandmother's funeral money was a great investment because that's helped so many people down the line. But I mean, you know, as you've gone through life, you've had an amazing life. I mean, you look at what you've achieved and what the experiences you've had. Did you at any, you know, when you were younger, have that feeling that, you know, I have a purpose here, I'm going to help, there's something I can do, or did it come much later in life?
When I was 18, I did a voluntary project outside London for 7 months. I worked in a home for abandoned, emotionally disturbed children. And I think when I came out, it was a full-time kind of house parent job, helping the kids with just basic needs. I mean, just trying to make a stable life for them, where they went to bed, they got up, they had breakfast, they went to school, they had a shower, they had dinner, they went to bed, which is stuff that, it was mind-blowing to me at 18 years old that these kids had never had this. They had no stability. And I think I got very complacent when I came out of that. I think I felt like I've done my time. And, you know, I sort of went through my very selfish years. Not that I'm not selfish now, but I was even more selfish then.
But, you know, I've only known you for a couple of days, and I think, you know, the determination, you have this view of the world like there is nothing really standing in the way of you doing what you want to do. I mean,
well, there isn't.
You broke your leg and you climbed Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, running out of skill has not done well. But yeah, I snapped this femur in half, and thankfully they bolted it all back together. And so I was on crutches for 3 months. I was about a year trying to get it to work right. And I was like, well, look, you know, I've got to go and it needs to go up Kilimanjaro now because it's got to work right. So I just decided to go train for it and make it strong, and up we went. So
I mean, I don't know how many of you have climbed Kilimanjaro. I've done it, and I certainly wouldn't want to do it with a broken leg. I mean, that's an extraordinary feat. It really is. And do you feel that, you know, you've had a lucky life, a charmed life?
very much so.
Do you make your own luck, or are you just lucky?
That's a tough question because I think there's so many days I do wonder why did I get so lucky, and especially when we travel. And I mean, I think it's a blessing and a curse that I feel like that, because so much of my life I understand how lucky I am, but then it is the opposite sometimes, you know. Yeah.
And do you feel now there's other things you can do? There's going to be more to come, right? I mean, I think that we're talking about here. There's a little clip of a ride. Let's have a look at this. This was the ride you organized to Peru,
I'm Neale
right?
Bailey.
This was the
motorcycle
show,
journalist
yeah.
and philanthropic adventure traveler. I'm about to take 3 average riders on the journey of a lifetime. We'll ride 8 days across the South American country of Peru.
Freaking creepy out here.
Our mission? To visit an orphanage for abandoned children in the remote southeastern desert.
You've got about 2.5 more hours of this, and it's gonna get worse. This is some gnarly ass.
If they're not good enough to do it, we're not making it.
If you don't have control of the bike, that's when it's gonna get scary.
Did you hit your rib?
Yeah.
Take your helmet. Let me see, where are you?
If you don't have this down, you can't go any further. You can't ride faster. You don't have the proper skills. And what'll happen is you'll get hurt. Yep.
I'm the only woman on the trip. The eyes are kind of on me, like, is she gonna make it?
Oh, man. This is the roughest terrain you can imagine riding a bike on.
You don't want to be the guy that's holding everybody back. But this sort of riding is very, very different.
Visibility is absolute Jamesy, I'm gonna make a decision today and put you in the truck.
I don't agree with it, and I want to ride today. It annoys the bananas out of me, really. I've made it clear that unless there's a real issue, I want to ride.
First stop, I'm stealing a motorcycle.
Sometimes when you feel like laying it down, you gotta keep going.
This has been one of the greatest days of my life so far.
I've seen a couple of kids that just touched my heart. I think there's still something there that longs to be an adoptive father.
How does a kid end up in an orphanage? How does a parent do that to somebody?
You're more alive than you ever feel, yet sometimes you're closer to death than you're ever gonna be.
This is Neale Bailey Rides.
So that is no ride in the park. I mean, that is not for the meek. and there are, you know, you can imagine just going through those situations where there was hardly any visibility, and some of the team weren't able to ride because you could see that they weren't really up to scratch and so
Just
on. But
below freezing, 15,000 feet, yeah.
Extraordinary experience.
Yeah, we ground them down pretty quick.
Extraordinary experience. But once wasn't enough.
No.
So I hear that there's a plan to do something else. What's coming up next?
I just should preface it that the team that we put on that, is everybody all right?
Somebody's fallen off the stage.
He got so excited by the bike. So the team that we took on that trip, we trained them for quite a long time on dirt bikes. They went all through BMW training. And I don't know that we would want to be that extreme with people again, because I think that was a particular idea to be challenging, and it was reality television style
Right.
for the message. And so part of the reason for being here is to look into the possibilities of doing a ride here in the Middle East, to explore culture, and bring a group of photographers and storytellers along on the ride, as opposed to this trip, which was sort of average people that were getting ready to come out of the comfort zone and be challenged.
And to raise funds again.
Yeah, to bring awareness to different causes. I think a lot of people here this week are representing some amazing causes. And there are a lot of different causes we could bring in attention by traveling. We could show the beauty of the region, some challenge, obviously, because you're on a motorcycle.
And there are some bikes here at the festival?
Yes, BMW have very kindly bought some bikes to put on display. There was a big GS, which you might recognize from the video. It's the type of bike we ride. It's sort of like a Land Rover, Range Rover of motorcycles. And they bought some of the cars because we use support vehicles for luggage and camera crews and people. So they've kindly bought some stuff along for us to have a look at.
Excellent. So we're looking for volunteers. So anyone in the audience that fancies taking the trip you just saw, please join Neale.
If you don't have any pins, rods, or bolts, it's a great opportunity.
Join Neale at the exhibition of the bikes, and we'll allocate you one, and you can go and do that ride. But Neale, I mean, it's been an incredible journey, your life, and as we say, you've been blessed, and you're in this position now where you're able to give back, which is fantastic. But professional motorcyclist, philanthropist, TV journalist, prolific traveler, storyteller, humanitarian, which one would you like to be your legacy? Which one defines you?
Father. Father.
There you go. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Aidan and Neale. We will take a little break and we'll be coming back after 10 minutes with Anthony Lamb. So please be welcome to join us in a bit.